Right, let's get right into it. We're going to map out how a simple collapsed lung, what we call a pneumothorax, can suddenly turn into this massive, life-threatening emergency. And you know what? It all boils down to one tiny but critical change in pressure inside the chest. Okay, so picture this. You're at the bedside, your patient's lung collapses. What's the one clue, the one thing you can see or feel that tells you this just went from bad to really bad, like life or death bad? We're going to get to that answer. But first, to really get it, we have to understand how things are supposed to work when everything's normal. So before all the chaos, the chest is this perfectly balanced system. It's kind of like a tug of war. The lung, with its elastic tissue, always wants to shrink down, to pull inward. But the chest wall, it wants to spring outward. So what keeps them from flying apart? Well, that's the magic of the pleural space. And that phrase, potential space, is so important. Don't think of it as some big, empty room in there. It's not. In reality, the lining of the lung is pretty much stuck right up against the lining of the chest wall. They're held together by this super thin layer of fluid, almost like two wet pieces of glass. And that creates this crucial negative pressure. I mean, look at that. We're talking 10 to 20 milliliters. That's like a couple of teaspoons of fluid. That's it. But that tiny bit of liquid creates this incredible suction force that basically glues the lung to the chest wall. It's why when your chest expands, your lung is forced to expand with it. But what happens when that perfect seal gets broken? And this is where it all starts to go wrong. The breach. Whether it's from an injury or just a spontaneous pop, a hole opens up. And air from the outside or from the lung itself rushes into that pleural space. And trust me, air does not belong in there. So here's the simple cause and effect, the basic physics of it all. Step 1, air gets in. Step 2, that air immediately destroys that negative pressure seal we talked about. Now, instead of suction, you've got positive pressure building up. And step 3, well, that pressure has to go somewhere. It pushes on the lung and poof, the lung just collapses on itself, kind of like a balloon with a hole in it. Okay, NCLEX alert. If you're studying for any kind of exam, you have to burn this image into your brain. This is the textbook classic story for a spontaneous pneumothorax. It's a total giveaway, and you're going to see it over and over again. So, you know the lung has collapsed on the inside. But what about the outside? Is there anything you can actually feel with your own hands that gives you a clue that air is leaking out? Yup, this is it. Crepitus. You know that crackly, poppy feeling under the skin? A lot of people say it feels like Rice Krispies. The why behind it is actually pretty fascinating. The pressure inside the chest gets so high that air is literally forced out of the pleural space and starts traveling through the tissue layers, getting trapped just under the skin. It's a sign you can physically touch that tells you there's a serious air leak happening inside. Okay, so far we have a simple pneumothorax. It's bad, but it's manageable. But now we get to the part where things can go downhill. And I mean fast. This is how a simple pneumothorax turns into a full-blown tension pneumothorax. And it all hinges on one single critical change. And here it is. This is the whole ball game right here. With a simple pneumo, air gets in, but it can also find its way out. It's a two-way street. But with a tension pneumothorax, that tear in the tissue acts like a one-way valve, a flap. So every time the person breathes in, air gets sucked into the chest. But when they breathe out, that flap slams shut. Air can get in, but it has absolutely no way to get out. And that one-way valve triggers this deadly cascade. The trapped air just builds and builds and builds. The pressure gets astronomical. It basically turns into a big, expanding air bubble that physically shoves everything. The heart, the major blood vessels, the windpipe, it shoves the whole works over to the other side of the chest. This is called a mediastinal shift. And it's disastrous because it literally kinks the big blood vessels, stopping blood from getting back to the heart. And if blood can't get into the heart, well, it can't be pumped out. So this brings us all the way back to that first question I asked. The patient is crashing, all that stuff is shifting inside. What are the absolute red flag alerts you're going to see at the bedside that just scream, this is a tension pneumothorax? All right, here they are. The big one, the classic late sign is tracheal deviation. You can literally see or feel the windpipe being pushed over, away from the side with the collapsed lung. It's being physically shoved out of the way. Then you're going to see their blood pressure just tank. We're talking profound hypotension. Why? Because the heart isn't getting any blood back to pump. No blood in, no blood out. And finally, severe cyanosis. The person turns blue. Not only is one lung completely useless for oxygen, but the heart can't even pump the little bit of oxygenated blood it might have. Okay, so you've spotted it. You know what's happening. Now what? What do you do? Your next move, your priority, really depends on what caused it. So let's break down two different but equally critical scenarios. Okay, scenario one, the problem is a hole to the outside, maybe a chest wound or a chest tube that got pulled out. Your first move is to get a sterile dressing. Anything occlusive will do in a pinch, and you cover that hole, but here's the key. You only tape it down on 3 sides. This is genius, really. It creates a makeshift flutter valve. When the patient breathes out, the pressure inside pushes the untaped side open, letting trapped air escape. But when they breathe in, the dressing gets sucked down flat, sealing the hole and stopping more air from getting in. It's a brilliant life-saving trick. But what if the problem isn't a hole to the outside? What if you see that trickle deviation, that crazy low blood pressure? That tells you the one-way valve is internal. A 3-sided dressing on the chest wall isn't going to do a thing. This needs something much more direct. So your job as the nurse is to recognize this emergency and immediately anticipate what's coming next. Needle decompression. You need to be ready for the provider to come in with a big needle and literally poke a hole in the patient's chest. The sound is unforgettable, a huge hiss of air as all that trapped pressure is released instantly. That lets the heart and vessels shift back into place, and boom, blood flow to the heart is restored. All right, that was a lot, I know. We went all the way from a tiny leak to a full-blown crisis. So let's lock it all in with a super fast 30-second recap of the entire pathway. It all starts with the cause. Air gets into the pleural space where it shouldn't be. That immediately leads to the first change. The lung loses its suction and collapses. Then comes the escalation. A one-way valve traps that air, and the pressure starts to build and build and build. That pressure creates the crisis, a mediastinal shift where the heart and vessels get shoved aside, which gives us our key sign. You see the trachea deviate, pushed away from the pressure. And that demands the one life-saving fix, decompression, to let all that trapped air out. And just like that, you've followed the entire deadly cascade and the intervention that stops it cold.